Okay, welcome to another tutorial in how to develop your monster design into a graphic. So in this tutorial, what we're going to do is we've actually already got our file from last time, Amoy's Monster Laser Cut version. If you just open up that file, what we're going to do is we're immediately going to save another version of this file, and we're going to change it to be called Amoy's Monster, but a coloured version. On this version today, we're going to explore how we can add colour, patterns and gradients. So the first thing is saving a new version in colour. So if we just go File, Save As, and making sure that we're still saving all of our files in the same area. I've got a folder here called Year 9 Art. I'm going to make sure it's save it there, not in a random file location, and I'm going to make sure I have a specific name. The reason we do this is because every year I have students that name their files random names and then they lose them, and it's really difficult to find. So if you keep things in an ordered location with a clear name, it's easy to find down the track. So let's change this to say Amoy's Monster Color Version. Still in Adobe Illustrator, hit save, and then OK. We no longer need that big circle in the center of the head, so I'm going to select it and delete it. All right, so adding color, this is the fun bit. Our image is still ungrouped, which means I can click on individual sections. If for some reason when you click on your monster, everything is selected, all you need to do is right click and then hit ungroup, yours will say, instead of group. Okay, so let's click on a shape. Come over here to the right hand side where it says properties. Click on the fill color, which currently is white. I'm going to go over to my swatches. I'm just going to choose a color, green. But let's say I want a slightly different green. If I go over to my color palette now, or my color mixer, I can really have a play with those toggles and change up the color exactly like I want it. So I might go with something like this. And then I'm going to change his little eyes as well. So his eye, select an eyelid. Actually, do you know what? I can click on both eyelids at the same time. If I select one, I can hold Control, Shift and Alt on my keyboard and then click. And now both are selected. So now I can ensure they're going to be the same color. Come over to the right hand side here, click Fill. Go over to my swatches first. Choose a color. I actually don't mind that green, but if I wanted to change it, I would go to my color mixer and then I'll just have a play with the color there. Okay, so now I'm creating a kind of interesting monster. I want this little section here, I've just noticed, to be the same color as this green. So I could select this little shape, come over to the left-hand side to my eyedropper tool. The shortcut is the letter I. And if I click on this area here, it should automatically reselect that color and change it to the same green. All right, so your job now is to fill your monster with the same colors that you're happy with. Well, undo. Click off. I might make his feet a slightly darker green. And he's kind of looking fairly groovy already. Let's add a color in for his hair. Cute. All right, we've got our little monster here. I could change the colors of the circles on his body really easily if I wanted to, just by using that same process and changing the colors. Okay, that's color. I'd like to show you now how you can add some patterns. So we're going to click on a shape. And what we need to do is open up our swatches menu. It's not currently showing, so we need to hit Window up the top, then go down and choose swatches. It'll now open up a new menu. I'm going to put that inside of my toolbar on the right hand side. Actually, I don't really like it there because it's taking up lots of space. So I'm going to move it into this part here. And here's my swatches menu. I've still got my properties, my layer options, my libraries, and all of those other options there now. So swatches, you come down the bottom left, you're going to see an option for Swatches Libraries menu, and that's like these little books, a book icon. Click on that, select patterns, and then just go through the options until you find a pattern option. Doesn't matter which one you select. So I'll go here. Cool thing about this is I've got these arrows here. It brings up now a library full of all of these patterns, and I can just navigate through the patterns. I'm going to click on a shape. I need to make sure that my fill color is what's showing in the foreground. If I have the stroke color in the foreground and I'm adding patterns, quite often we don't see anything changing, and it's because you're adding the pattern to the stroke, that outline. Unless we zoomed in, you wouldn't actually see that pattern. I can see it now that I've zoomed in, but I'm just going to make sure there's nothing on my stroke. Click on the fill color, and now let's play around with adding some patterns. And you can see that these patterns are quite groovy, and because they're vector patterns, they're really nice and clean in their design. And they just add another element of interest to your overall design. So you might want to have a play with some patterns. Okay, the last thing I would like to show you is how you can create, we can always get this option back, so I'll just go out of it, how you can create some gradients. So if we come back up to Window and select Gradient, it's going to open another option for us. We'll just add that in up here as well. Let's click on a shape. So I might choose the body of this monster. Where it's got black and white there, I'm going to make sure I just click the arrow down and I'll just choose this orange to yellow version. It doesn't matter that it's not the colors that I want. It's really easy to change. So I'm going to double click on that yellow, and that allows me to change the color. I might change it to some greens. But now I've got green, I've got yellow, orange and red, so they're getting a bit messy. So I might actually remove some of these boxes, and to remove them all you have to do is click on the box and drag it down, and that's going to delete it. Click and drag it away, click and drag it away. I'll double click on this red and I'll change that to be a bluier green, and now I've got a pattern that I kind of prefer. If I wanted to add in another colour, let's say I move this down a little bit, and I want to add in another box. When I hover down the bottom here, you'll notice that a plus icon shows up. So I'm going to click. Now I can double click and I can change that so it's more of a blue. And now I've got a gradient of 3 colours that work really nicely together. I also want to show you that up the top here, it says type. Currently we've got a linear gradient, which means it blends in a line from one colour to the other. If I change that type to radial, it will now blend in from a circle, and that can look really good depending on what it is you're trying to add your gradient to. So I might actually come over to the left hand side and you'll see another gradient option. This gradient here sets where the start and the direction of your gradient. So I can click and drag it now, and I can just make it his stomach that's all lit up. I might actually take out that green and I'll make it look like it's going light to dark. That makes him look like he's got a bit of a belly sticking out. I can also hover around that line, around the edge, and I can change the direction. In the case of radial, it's not going to do much, but if I had linear selected and I change the direction, I can make it look as though there's a light source coming from the left-hand side, or I can spin it right around and make it look like the light source is coming from a different direction, and I can move that around. Yeah, so there's some options for gradients, patterns, and colours. Have a play.